Good morning. Hopefully they'll turn on the lights back there. Thank you, Randall. My name is Katherine Haney, and I'm delighted to be speaking with such an intelligent group. Thank you, Randall and Kathy, for inviting me to speak. It makes perfect sense that I would be the final speaker because all weekend long you guys have been talking about ideas and issues and kind of defining your message, and now I'm going to talk about how to turn that message into action. First, a little bit about me. I am a political consultant from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I started my own business after years of doing volunteer work for the Republican Party because people started to offer to pay me for what other folks were doing for free. So I certainly know about volunteering. I've also been a delegate at the county, district, state, and national Republican Party levels, and I do understand the party people. I have run races for city council, state house, state senate, judicial races, and attorney general. So I've been through a few campaigns, and now that you know a little bit about me, I want to know a little bit about the group. So if you would just raise your hand, that would be helpful. If you are a registered Democrat, could you raise your hand? Okay, great. If you are from the DC area, could you raise your hand? Okay. And if you are an elected official? Okay, super. Thank you. First, to the Democrats in the room, I'm sorry if my remarks accidentally slip in Republican, GOP, whatever. Just overlay it in your mind with liberal or Democrat or whatever works for you. It's much easier than saying his or hers or all that monkey business. So please forgive me. I'm going to tailor my message a little bit. Secondly, to the folks from DC, if you guys could just play along a little bit, because of where you live, some of my remarks just don't apply because DC is an alternative universe where the local politics is completely overshadowed by the star power of the national folks. So if you guys could just hang in there for me. And finally, to our elected officials, I'll be gearing my remarks towards an issue campaign, but the same applies to a general campaign. And I also must insist that you elected officials, if you haven't already done so, please hire a political consultant. It's good for your career, and it preserves the mental stability of your spouse. So now that we have all that stuff out of the way, let's get started. In order to make it easier for you to hear my presentation, we actually need to go back in time. Okay, cue choir from yesterday. Where are they when you need them? Okay. The thing that we need to do is get in the mental frame of an era before email, before web pages, before automated mass mailings, before the 30-second mega advertising blitz and PowerPoint presentations. This era that I'm talking about is when you actually knew your neighbors. Moms baked real cookies, and dads coached their sons' sports teams, and PTA meetings were packed, and friends enjoyed bringing their best casserole to the church potluck dinners. Politics at the grassroots level is not about highfalutin theories and expensive advertising. It's just about me and you and you and your relationship to him and her. And politics is just about people. In 1998 and 2000, Yale did a study about the effect of personal contact on voter turnout, and their findings were very significant. According to their survey, a brief visit to the home of a registered voter raised the turnout by 10%. As noted by our keynote speaker yesterday, 10% is a really big victory in the political world. We might even refer to it as a mandate. Anyway, 10% more just for stopping by and saying hi. It wasn't about an auto dialer or an email or anything that is slick and glossy. It was about personal contact between two people, someone conveying an idea who has credibility, who has a relationship, and can do one-on-one convincing. I wanted to kind of talk just a little bit about how do you make that happen. Some of you might have tried to implement some of these great ideas that we've been talking about this weekend and failed at this grassroots stuff before, and you might be wondering why. Well, it's fairly simple. If you've failed, there's one of two problems. Either you've got the wrong message or you've got the wrong messenger. So first, let's just talk a little bit about the message. To develop a persuasive message, it is critical to a campaign. And this is like boiling down your gigantic idea into one or two sentences that are crisp and clear and can be easily digested. A lot of the transit rail stuff is really heavy material, needs to be boiled down. And there are people who do this for a professional living. The reason that you want to really work on the message is because it helps with getting volunteers. If you can say to somebody you know when you see them at the mall or wherever, hey, you know, I'm working on a project about light rail and how it's really going to increase congestion. Okay, that's a really quick sentence. You haven't had to go into a dissertation, and now you've got a little bit about your message to help you gather volunteers, which is what he was talking about earlier. And once you've got those volunteers, that's great, but you've got to be able to pull them in with the message. The other thing about a message is you want to make sure that you're not being defined by your opponent. It is so critical to make sure that when the liberals are talking about spending all this money on the big dig or any of this stuff, that you can define exactly what they're doing and they don't reflect it badly on you and take all the words out of your mouth. That's why you get out early with a quick and nice message. Finally, that a good, quick, solid, pretty message will ensure that people know exactly what they're giving money for. Every campaign requires some dough, and when you're doing fundraising, you've got to be able to say something that's quick and persuasive and makes sense, and that way they can understand the message. This check is for stopping the light rail. Very simple. There is a little formula about message, M equals EC3. And this is easy for you to remember. The message has to contain four basic things. Emotion. Republicans are really bad at this. Liberals are great at it. You kind of have to tie that message with an emotional appeal. Give it some humanism, some passion. The second thing is contrast. This is, you've got to say how your stance on the issue is different from your opponent. So now we've got, for our message, we have emotion and contrast. The third part is connection. You've got to be able to draw on something that they already know. Like a lot of times you'll hear, well, based on a $100,000 house, the tax increase will be whatever. That's because we can all in our mind think, okay, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, da-da-da-da, and put it together what a $100,000 house is. So you've got to be able to help people connect it in their mind to something they already know. And finally, part of the message needs to have credibility. This is when that it really is dependent on the issue. For example, if you have a photo session with all white elderly males talking about abortion, that panel is just lacking credibility. So what you want to do is just make sure that you can present it in a way that lends credibility, not that you're the expert, but just that you can relate to what you're talking about. So that message, M equals EC3 message: emotion, contrast, connection, and credibility. Just back to the second reason that a campaign might fail is the messenger. And there are all sorts of people to plug in, which is what JP was talking about, how to move the volunteers and what to do once you get them and how to keep them motivated and their gold stars and all that. As the leader, as the natural leader, because you're the guy with the idea and you know the issue, let me caution you by saying it's so important to always be yourself. Tailor your message, but don't be insincere. Insincerity will kill you in the media, with your volunteers, and with your donors. So if you don't feel comfortable doing something, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Give it to somebody else that's a more sincere approach for them. Like I, for example, am not really comfortable raising money on the phone. That doesn't work for me. It's not part of my personality. And when I do it, it sounds artificial. Kind of like when someone's smiling and they're shaking like no, yes, it just doesn't look right. So just make sure that it fits for you personally. I wanted to say that there are some folks who can really make or break your campaign, and these are the messenger type people. There is a man, Gladwell, who wrote this book, The Tipping Point. I don't know if any of you have read it recently, but he talks about 3 kinds of folks: connectors, mavens, and salespeople. And these are people who you want to get on your volunteer team. The first one is a connector. These are folks who have their hands in all sorts of stuff. They're the people who can kind of go from different world to different world, and you just think, gosh, how's that person enjoy all those diverse activities? Like someone who would enjoy going to both a Durham Bulls game and the symphony in the same day. This kind of person who's just kind of all over the place. These people make friends really easily, and they also have a gift for bringing folks together. These are connectors, and they're critical in your campaign because they're going to help start that ground fire for the grassroots, get that message out. These connectors know people that you would never know. You didn't go to the Bulls game. They went with 15 of their friends, and they all play on a different baseball team. So these people are critical. Another one is a maven. Maven is someone who is an information specialist. This is kind of like your policy wonk. This might be somebody from the city council who has really studied in detail the budget about the transit stuff that's coming down the pike. These people are specialists on information, and they like to share it with you. They don't hoard that information. They're both the student. They learn it themselves. They read through that 500-page budget, and then they want to tell you about it. It's great. You've got to have these mavens, because what they are is specialists, and they prevent you from having to be weighed down with all this policy stuff, and they can make your volunteer pool diverse. You don't want to have all the same kind of people doing your volunteer work. Otherwise, you get fatigue in some areas. Some stuff isn't getting done, and then other stuff you have way too many people. So finally, the third type of person is a salesperson, which is fairly self-explanatory. The one thing that these guys have is they can persuade you when other people are unconvinced. And it's more than they're funny or good on their feet or whatever. They can actually take an idea that you don't buy into and convince you of it. And I'm sure we've all met that person. You want to have them on the campaign. They help you motivate the volunteers. They help with the donors. So each type of this person, of these people, can really help in your campaign as you're going along. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of time this morning to go into all the details about the nitty-gritties of how to actually set up a campaign, I hope that you will attend my little workshop afterwards and we can get into some more detail. But there are a lot of online resources about the structure of a campaign. What I wanted to do was just kind of bring it in and say this is about personal relationships with people who you know, who you're sincere with. And I wanted to conclude with just a little bit about a campaign. I think everyone has a vague idea of how a campaign goes, and especially with what JP was saying. The tasks at first might seem daunting with hundreds of volunteers and thousands of dollars, and months of your life are going to be spent on this thing. And indeed, this task is not for the faint of heart. However, the sheer fact that you've agreed to work on this campaign and make a difference in your community says something really strong about you. As you move forward in your campaign, remember there are bumps in the road. People will discourage your efforts, and at times you might lose track of the big picture, but remember every vote is gained one vote at a time. If you discover that an individual is not supporting your efforts, try and persuade them with your message, but don't be discouraged. There are thousands of other people to visit, and often the most successful way to keep your chin up during a campaign is to constantly remind yourself that you're not in it alone. We're all in this big world together, and sending thank you cards, saying thank you, and being personable with everyone that you interact with is a really good way to express your gratitude and a positive and rewarding way to keep you motivated and on track. So with that in mind, I sincerely hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I want to say thank you.